Hi everyone. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate for you BlueStacks, and this is a emulator that emulates the Android on Windows 10 machines. And so if everything looks a little different, it's because I had to move in front of my Windows machine. I usually record in Linux, but for this I have to do it in Windows. Okay. I don't know if there's BlueStacks for Mac. There definitely isn't BlueStacks for Android. There are other Android emulators out there, but they're not as good as BlueStacks. So I thought I'd move here and do it in front of my Windows machine to show you a really good emulator of an Android system. Okay. By the way, if you see me not looking directly at the camera, and that's because my monitor is slightly above the camera. Okay. But what you're looking at here right now is the website bluestacks.com. Okay. And if you go there and you can just click on the downloads button, and what will happen is the installer will download to your downloads folder. Double click it and it'll install. It takes a while, and then you can start it up. Okay, I've already done that, and I've already started it up, and so I'm seeing it running here, and the emulator is just a window among all my other windows on my Windows machine. Okay, so I'm using OBS Studio, so I'm just going to switch, and what you're going to just see next is just the Android window. But like I said, it's one window among other windows that are running. Okay, so let me get there. Okay, there it is. Okay, now you're seeing a black background here because there's nothing else that OBS shows you. But like I said, this is just one window among others. All right, let me make it a little bit bigger for you so you can see here like that. Probably a bit too much. And let me show you what you're looking at here on the side. What you see are some buttons, and what these buttons are all about is basically they're like your home button, okay, or your recently opened apps button, or there's like this button here which allows you to shake, so that sometimes like a game controller, you could shake it, or you could actually rotate it. Okay, so there's when you rotate your phone, it changes the aspect. So there you go, you can rotate it back and forth, and in many ways, not in every way, but in many ways, it's just like an Android phone. Let me just fix this so you can see there we go, like that. Okay, it's like an Android phone. All right. Now I have a few apps installed, but let me just show you how to install some more apps. Okay, and let's install a game. All right. How about Sheep and Clouds, or I guess it's called Clouds and Sheep, and yeah, Clouds and Sheep. There, it's just a silly game. I've played it in the past, and if you click on that, and if you own an Android, you know what you're looking at here, the Google Play Store, and you can just hit install. And I think it's about 30 megabytes in size, so this will just take a second. Yeah, it's 29.48 megabytes in size. Okay, and it's installing. Now I could open it from here, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit the home button, and you can see here now you get the desktop, and there on the desktop is the icon for Clouds and Sheep. Okay, and we can start that up. And let's play it a little bit because why not? Okay, and you can see here, here's the game, and you can hear it playing in the background. Okay, and can hit start. And I don't know if you've ever played this. It's a pretty old game, but it's kind of fun. Basically, you've got clouds up here and sheep, and these signs tell you what to do, and they'll give you a little bit of instructions like welcome to the pasture, always look out for other signs. Okay, and what you could do is you could grab like a sheep, and you can put it in front of some grass, and they'll start eating the grass. And you could do things like throw them up into the air like that, and apparently it doesn't hurt them. I don't know how that works, but there you go. So there's your app running, and you could start up other apps as well. Over here is your recent button, so you could see that you've got Clouds and Sheep running. You've got the Play Store running, and you can switch between them like that, just like you do on a regular Android, and you can clear them all. All right, and we're back to that. And then, of course, if you want to uninstall it, then over here is under the Systems apps, you've got Settings. Okay, and you could change various settings in here, but let's go to the apps, and you should see somewhere in here. Here it is, Clouds and Sheep, and let's do an uninstall of that app. Okay, it says, do you really want to do that? And that happened pretty quickly, actually. Let's go back to the home, and you can see now on the on the desktop here of the Android system that it is the app has been removed. Okay, and so you know, if you want to play a game, or I mean, there's other apps besides games for Android, but if you need an Android app and you don't want to do it on your phone, you want to do it on your desktop, BlueStacks is the way to go. Okay, and then finally, once you're done, you can actually turn it off. And I'm just going to move my image. Whoops, I'm going to move my image down here like that, and you can see up at the top now, right here, there's just an X. Okay, and you just basically click on that, and it closes like any other window. All right, so we'll say close, and it should shut off. And right now, of course, all you're seeing is just like this black background because that window has disappeared. Okay, but you know, I've got all my other windows running, you know, like my browser's going, and OBS Studio, the recording program, is working as well, and that's it. Okay, so you can now run Android apps on Windows. Okay, remember, Android apps are target the Android operating system, and so they won't run directly in Windows. But if you have an emulated layer in there, you can have an Android app running on a guest Android system, okay, and then the guest Android operating system running inside of BlueStacks on Windows. Okay, and that's how you can get Android running in Windows. All right, let's go back to the other computer now. Okay, everyone, what we're going to do next is look at Virtualbox. Okay, so Virtualbox allows you to emulate an entire computer within your computer. Okay, so there's two steps to this. The first step is you need to install Virtualbox itself, but Virtualbox doesn't bring with it operating systems, so it just gives you these kind of raw virtual computers, and then you're going to have to do the second step, which is choose whatever operating system you want and then install that. Okay, so let me show you those two steps. The first thing is if you go to virtualbox.org, you can download the software from there. Okay, so if you click on downloads here, okay, you could see that VirtualBox is available for Windows, it's available for Mac, Linux, and then a couple of other operating systems that I didn't even discuss. Okay, and so you know, if you're on a Windows machine, you would download VirtualBox for Windows. If you're on a Mac OS X, you would download VirtualBox for Mac OS X, or I'm going to be doing it in Linux. Okay, now that's for your native operating system. That's like actually the operating system that your computer is running. It isn't the operating system that you're going to install within VirtualBox. It's the operating system that is already running on your computer. Okay, so once you download that and install it, you can start it up, and then you're going to see a window that looks something like this. Okay, now this one already has two virtual machines that I built earlier. I don't want to throw them away so that they're there. So they're still there and you can see them. There's this one here, and then there's that one. But if you downloaded it and installed VirtualBox at home, you wouldn't even see those two tabs. You would just see this top tab here like that. Okay, so what you have to do now is you actually have to build a virtual machine. Okay, and the first step is to, you know, decide what hardware goes into this virtual machine. Now, it's not real hardware, it's virtual hardware. Okay, it's the program emulating the hardware that you're going to be installing the operating system on top of. Okay, and to do that, you go to the tab here where it says machine and you click on new. Okay, and what it does is it pops up a window, and let me show you that pop-up window. It's right here. Okay, and then let me make it a little bit bigger for you. All right, and it's basically a wizard. All right, so let's walk through this wizard. The first thing is you got to give the name a machine, and we'll call it just a demonstration. Okay, and this next line here is like where on, you know, where's the path to what folder do you want to actually put the files that are part of the virtual machine. Generally just leave it alone and let it go to wherever the default is, but you know, you might want to move it to some other part of your like maybe onto your desktop or something like that. Okay, and then the next item is the type here, and if you click on that, you're going to see that you've got a whole bunch of different families of operating systems that you can install. Okay, now my native operating system is Linux, but you know, and yours is probably Windows or Mac, but you could choose to install a guest like Linux on top of Windows, or you could choose to install Mac OS X on top of Windows, or if you're running a Mac natively, you can install Windows on top of that. So the guest operating system here doesn't have anything to do with what operating system you're running at home. That's kind of the point of this. Okay, so even though I'm running Linux, okay, right now natively, I can install Windows on top of that. I could choose that, and then below it you see that there's a whole bunch of different Windows machines that are operating systems that you could choose from. Okay, and like there's Windows 10 64-bit or Windows 10 32-bit. Okay, and you could go all the way back to Windows 95, which was like back in Windows 95, and so on. So there's a whole there's the entire family of all Windows machines. Okay, and if you want, instead of like choosing a Windows operating system, you could choose Linux, and then what you have is all the different flavors of Linux. Okay, so we're going to be installing Ubuntu 64-bit, which is here, but you could install any other operating system, Linux flavor of operating system. Like I'm a Gentoo developer, so I can install Gentoo 64-bit. Okay, like that. All right, and then of course there's other operating systems like Mac OS X. Okay, now technically speaking, Mac OS X, you're only allowed to install it on hardware, Mac hardware. Okay, that's what the license says. But you can certainly go ahead and if you get the Mac image, you can go ahead and install it inside of this. Okay, so it breaks the agreement, so you're not supposed to do that, but it is technically possible, although it's not legally proper. Okay, all right, so what we're going to do though is we're actually going to install Linux on top of Linux. We're going to install Ubuntu 64-bit Ubuntu on top of 64-bit Ubuntu. And you might say, well, that's kind of silly why you're doing that. You're right, I'm doing that mostly because this is a demonstration. Okay, so that's why I'm doing it, not for any other reason. Normally you'd want, like if you've got a Linux machine, normally you want maybe a Windows operating system as your guest and Linux as your native, or so and so on. Okay, but okay, let's continue from this point on. The next thing is this window here, and this asks you how much memory do you want to give it. Okay, now my entire computer has 16 gigabytes of memory. All right, so you see it here as 16,000. So I have 16 gigabytes. It says 16,000 megabytes. Okay, but remember, 1,000 megabytes is a gigabyte. So 16,000 megabytes is 16 gigabytes. Okay, now you can't give all of that memory over to the guest. If you can't do this. If you did this, then the problem is then you'd be giving all the memory over to the guest, and there'd be no memory for the host. Okay. On the other hand, you don't want to give the guest too little memory because then it won't run at all. All right. And so I'm going to give it 4 gigabytes like that. Okay. Now this is coming out in megabytes. So I'm going to give it 4,096 megabytes. And that's like 4 gigabytes of memory. And that should be enough. Okay. For our virtual machine. Okay. And then the next one is you got to give it some storage. In other words, a hard drive. And you can actually build these things without a hard drive, but I don't know where you'd store any of your information. You could use a hard drive that like a virtual hard drive that you're bringing from another machine if you built a virtual machine somewhere else. Okay, and that's what makes these things portable. But we're going to create a new virtual machine, a virtual hard drive, for this machine. Okay, and we'll say create here like that. All right, and I have to switch to that window. All right, there it is. Okay, oops, it's a little bit too, there you go. Now you can see it, okay? And it says, it's yet another wizard, and it's going to walk you through it. Now, there are 3 different formats that you could choose for the hard drive. There's no reason to change from VDI, okay? So just choose the default here, okay? The other 2 are for compatibility. Okay, and so what we're going to do is go next, and of course, you have to say how big is this hard drive going to be, and it's kind of nice because you can make the hard drive to be dynamically allocated, and what that means is that suppose you're going to say, look, I want my hard drive to never grow bigger than 100 gigabytes. Okay, so I want a 100 gigabyte hard drive. Well, you don't have anything to store on that 100 gigabyte hard drive to start with. So what it does is it actually creates something smaller, and it grows it dynamically up to a limit of 100 gigabytes. as you start putting stuff into the virtual hard drive. So that's kind of nice because even though you say you want 100 gigabytes, it won't actually allocate the 100 gigabytes until you actually need them. Okay, and so there's no reason not to choose dynamically allocated. If, however, you say, look, I want a 100 gigabyte virtual drive, and just create it all at once, you can do that. But like I said, that's going to allocate all this extra information that you may not need until later. Okay, so long story short, just basically dynamically allocate your disk space. Okay, and then how big do you want it to be? Now 10 gigabytes is probably too small. Okay, so like most hard drives that you buy are not even in the gigabyte range, they're in the terabytes. Okay, and the hard drive that I have on this machine is 2 terabytes, so I can't put all of the data, the full 2 terabytes, I can't give that all over to the virtual machine, because then there isn't anything for the host. The guest would get everything. Okay, but I can probably spare up to 100 gigabytes, and so over here we're just going to increase that until we're roughly 100. 101 is good enough. Okay, and then we hit create, and the machine is created. I have to switch back to that window. Just give me 1 second here. And oops, now it's everything is too big. Let me shrink that down. Sorry, I'm using OBS Studio, which every time you change a window, you have to resize things. Okay, so what you're looking at right now is basically the VirtualBox program. We're back to that, and you can see that you've got the 2 tabs from before. Okay, those were my machines that I built earlier, and here's the new one called demonstration right there. Okay, now even though we said that we were going to install Ubuntu, in fact you can see it right up here, okay, where it says Ubuntu 64-bit. Okay, even though we said that we were going to install it, there's nothing installed yet. Okay, so there's no operating system installed. Now when you buy a computer, it comes with the operating system installed, otherwise you wouldn't even be able to start it up. Okay, but this is like a fresh computer that we're building from scratch, as if we were the manufacturer, and it doesn't have an operating system. Let me show you what happens if you start a computer up with no operating system. Okay, so you hit start here, and what it does is let me switch to that window so you can see it. What it does is it actually gives you a little warning here. Okay, and the warning basically says, look, I don't know that you have an operating system on here. Don't you want to install an operating system before you actually start up the machine? And so VirtualBox is kind of smart. Okay, it says, look, I know you don't have an operating system, so are you sure you want to do this? And you know what? We're going to say, yeah, we're just going to go right ahead and start this without an operating system, because that's kind of the point of the demonstration, to show you that it's going to fail. Okay, and so let me go ahead and just cancel out of that, and let me show you what window comes up. There's several windows coming up, which is why I got to keep switching back and forth between them. And here you go. This is what you're going to see now. Okay, so this is my virtual machine, my computer started up, and you go, well, what's it doing? And you take a look here. It says fatal, no bootable medium found, system halted. All right, this is what happens to a computer if it doesn't have an operating system. All right, so if you were to buy a computer, and you can do this, although most computers are not sold this way unless you ask for a computer without an operating system. You're going to get a computer with an operating system, but you could say, you can go to a site like Tiger Direct and buy a computer with no operating system. You bring it home, you turn it on, and this is what's going to happen. It's going to say fatal, no bootable medium found, system halted. What the computer does is it first looks on the hard drive and it says there's no operating system here. Let me look elsewhere. It looks to see if you've got any USB drives attached, or if you have like one of the old DVD players attached. Most computers don't have them now, but it looks for that, and it says, do I have a USB drive with an operating system on it? If the answer is no, then it actually starts even looking, it gets desperate. It starts looking on the internet, and it just asks any computer that's around it, is there any computer that can give me an operating system over the internet? And if the answer is no to all of these, it says, look, I can't do it. I don't have an operating system, and so I have to halt. Okay, and so let's close this window down. Okay, and whoops, I made a slight mistake here. Let me switch to back to this. All right, and well, it's sorry about that. It's actually too big right now. All right, there you go. There's the machine, and it's in this saved state. Okay, actually, probably what I want to do is let me start it up one more time and make sure that it's actually properly uh, in a proper state. Okay, I'm gonna crash it. Okay, yeah, I accidentally pressed the wrong button. Basically, I shut it off. Okay, see where it says power off? So now it's powered off. Now, if I start it up again, it'll just do the same thing again. It'll say, look, I don't have an operating system. What do you want me to do? Okay, and so we're going to give it an operating system. Now, we have to get one. So how do you get an operating system? All right. Well, you get an operating system like anything else off of the internet. And so there's, you can go to Windows, or Microsoft, sorry, and you can go, look, I want to download the Windows 10 disk image. It's called an ISO. And basically what this file has, it's a single file, but it has the entire operating system in it, okay? And then you can put it in you could direct VirtualBox to where its operating system is. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Start it up again, and what will happen is it'll start to run Windows 10, but the installer for Windows 10, okay? Now, we could install Windows 10, but I don't want to do that. And the reason is that you get to the end of installing Windows 10 and it asks you for a license. Okay. So, Microsoft is happy to give you Windows 10 because to download and install on your computer, because you're not going to get very far with it without a special key that'll then activate the product. Okay. And of course, they're going to want money for that. All right. Because Windows 10 costs money. Okay. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to install Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu is free. Okay, and now let me just go to the website itself. Basically, you just go to ubuntu.com. Okay, that's the website, ubuntu.com, and here's the front page. Okay, and then you click on the tab where it says download. Okay, and it gives you all these download options. All right, now you might be overwhelmed. You might go, well, what do I want here? Do I want an Ubuntu server or desktop? Well, you want a desktop. Even if it's being installed to a laptop, you want a desktop. Okay. Basically, it's like just like Windows 10, but a different operating system, which you'll see in a minute. And you want to actually interact with it the way you do, like your laptop. Okay. Now, a server is a little different. A server, they're the ones that serve out web pages. We'll see them when we talk about the internet later. Okay. That's not what you want because they don't have desktops. They're like service computers. They're not actual desktops. Okay. And then there's a couple of versions of Ubuntu. Okay. There's 2004. Okay, and that's the long-term support, and that's usually what you would want to run. But we're going to actually install 2104. Okay, 21 is for 2021. Okay, 2104, and that's just the latest version of Ubuntu. Not that it matters much. You click on that, and it's going to download. Okay, it's going to download a file, and the name of the file is Ubuntu 2104 desktop AMD64 ISO. Okay, now that's a bit of a mouthful. Whoops, we lost our web page here. Let me switch back to that. Or actually, let's go to VirtualBox. Okay, now that's a bit of a mouthful. So, what are all the components there? Well, Ubuntu, that's the name of the flavor of Linux. Okay, 2104, that's the version. Okay, desktop rather than server. Okay, the AMD 64 is a little bit confusing. Well, what does AMD 64? That's basically 64-bit Intel architecture. Okay, so remember there's our ARM architecture, and there's Intel architecture, and then there's PowerPC. There's a whole bunch of different architectures. Okay, almost every single laptop or desktop is AMD 64 or Intel, 64-bit Intel. Okay, and so that's the one we want. All right, and it downloads, and then the extension of the file is .iso, and you say, well, what do I do with that? Okay, so inside of a VirtualBox, there's a place where you can scroll down here, and I noticed that I do not have a virtual CD player, so I think we might have to add. Oh no, we do. Here it is. Optical drive. Okay, so what the heck is an optical drive? Optical drive basically is your CD or DVD player. Okay, I know they're kind of ancient, but don't forget that none of this is physical. This is all pretend hardware. It's all virtual hardware, okay? And so if you click on that, if you click on this optical device, it actually says, it actually directs you to where you want to grab the disk image, okay? And you can't see this, but it's basically a window that allows me to direct to the image, okay? And let me see here. Choose. Whoops, no, I made a mistake. And let me go to the desktop. I picked the wrong file. Okay. And I'm going to put that desktop. Now I'm going to switch just to show you that window because it is worth seeing it. But it's nothing very big. It's just basically this window here, which allows you to navigate to where the file is. Okay, let me make that a little bit bigger for you. Okay, see this file here? It's Ubuntu 2104 desktop AMD64.ISO. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you to do this, and I just want to show you how you do this. So basically, this is the physical equivalent of putting a DVD into the computer. Okay, that's what the physical equivalent would be. We're doing it virtually. Okay, but if you said, well, what's the physical equivalent of that? Because a virtual is supposed to be a reflection of the physical. That would be like me taking the operating system off of a DVD that's on a DVD and putting it into the computer. Okay, so once I select that file, then that file will be attached to the computer, and then I can boot the computer, and it'll boot off of that rather than not finding an operating system. Okay, so let me switch back to my other window here like that. Okay, so one sec. Let me say okay, and if you take a look right here, okay, so right along there where it says optical device, and now it says Ubuntu 2104 desktop AMD64.ISO. That means that ISO image, that image that contains the installer for the operating system, is now attached to the computer. It's like I said, like putting the DVD into the computer. Okay. When I start this computer up now, it'll do the same thing it did before. It's going to look on the hard drive, and it's going to say, there's no operating system here. What do I do? Then it's going to look to the DVD player, the virtual DVD player, and it's going to go, aha, I found it, and it's going to start that up. Okay, it's going to start up the operating system off of that. Okay, now that isn't the operating system that we're eventually going to use. That's the operating system running off of the DVD. We're going to use that to install that operating system onto the hard drive. Okay, so that's what we're going to do next. So let me start up the computer. All right, and let me switch here to the proper window that shows that starting up. Okay, and here it is starting. Let me just make that a little bit bigger for you. Okay, it's already discovered that there's an operating system on the DVD. Okay, and this is what's known as the bootloader. That's where you get to decide what what's the next step in the operating system, and it's going to boot in just about 8 more seconds. Okay, so I could have sped it up, but it's going to boot, and it's going to boot into Ubuntu. All right, so here it goes. Got to shrink it down a bit. There you go. You can see the entire window. This is Ubuntu Linux booting off of the virtual DVD player. Okay, it's not booting. There's nothing on the hard drive yet. Okay, there you go. It booted up. It actually took a while, about 10 minutes, but I cut that out of the video so you just didn't watch just some dead time there. Okay, and basically you have 2 choices right now. You could continue running Ubuntu off of the DVD player, and that's what that icon is here. And it says try Ubuntu. Okay, and you might want to do that on your own laptop if it had a DVD player. You could transfer the ISO to the DVD player, and then, or even onto a USB, boot off of the USB, and then you could actually try Ubuntu on your laptop without it touching the hard drive. Okay. By the way, that's how hackers get at your hard drive, because they'll just put in a USB stick into your laptop, boot off of the operating system on the USB stick, and the hard drive, it just sits there kind of like a sitting duck. It isn't doing anything, and none of the protections, none of the passwords are active because that entire operating system isn't active. And then from the operating system on the USB drive, they're able to get onto the hard drive and take a look. Okay, but we want to actually install Ubuntu, so we're going to click on that icon right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and start installing Ubuntu. All right. And I guess there are languages, but we're going to use English. And the next step may seem like a strange step. You go, well, why is it asking me about a keyboard? And that's because there's a lot of different keyboards out there. And especially if you're going to be typing in a password, you want to make sure that what you're typing into the computer actually corresponds to the keyboard you have. Okay, and there are some really strange keyboards out there. There's like the usual keyboard that you have, which is called the QWERTY, but then there's the Colmac and the Dvorak, and you wonder, what are these? They actually, the keys are actually laid out differently. Okay, I don't know if you knew about that, but these are actually different layouts. Okay, but anyhow, we're going to just stick with the plain old US keyboard like that, and then we can just say continue. Okay. And the next thing is it asks you some options about the installation. There are two options here. One of them is, do you want to do a normal installation, which is what we want to do, where you get everything? Or do you want to do a minimal installation where you just get a desktop but there's like nothing else installed, and then you could select afterwards? Generally, I don't recommend the minimal installation just because there's like very little there, and it's hard to work with not having anything. And you say, well, then how do I install this? How do I install that? The normal installation gives you pretty much everything you need, okay, including LibreOffice, which we'll study later on. And LibreOffice is a replacement for Microsoft Word, free, okay. Now there's two other options here. One of them is download your updates. Like when an operating system is installed, it's a little bit out of date, and there's updates to make it up to date, okay, with all this, especially if it's got some security updates. And I highly recommend that you do that. I'm going to turn it off here only because I don't want to waste time, okay? But otherwise, I would recommend strongly that you do download the updates as you're installing, okay? But again, we're just not going to do that just in the name of time. And then there's also third-party software, and you might wonder, well, what's this third-party software? Ubuntu is free, you see. But there's other software out there that isn't exactly free. Now, there's two senses to the word free. There's free that it doesn't cost you money, but there's free in terms of the license. Ubuntu is free not only that it doesn't cost you money, it's also free in terms of the license. You don't have to agree to anything. Well, there's some agreements that you're making implicitly, but, like there's nothing where you say, I'm only going to use it this way and not that way. But there are some third-party software where there's extra licensing. Even though they give it to you for free, there's extra things that you have to agree to. And that's what this other piece is down here, okay? So install third-party software for graphics and so on. I would recommend that you do both if you were doing this on your own machine, okay? But I'm going to do neither, again, only in the name of time, okay? Okay, that again took a while, and I cut that out of the video as well, okay? And now it says, all right, what do you want to do here? Okay, this is the installation type. So right now my system only is blank. The hard drive is blank. If you had a system which had another operating system on it, this could actually do the dual booting for you. Okay, but I again really don't like dual booting. I used to like it, but it's not a good idea. Virtual machines are great. So anyhow, this is a virtual machine and it's blank. So this basically says erase the drive and install Ubuntu, okay? There's also these advanced features, and let's take a look at what some of these advanced features are, okay? One of them has to do with LVM, which allows you to add some extra hard drives, okay? But it also allows you to do one more thing, and that is it allows you to encrypt the new operating system, okay? So if you didn't do this, if all you did was let's cancel that. If all you did was just erase the disk, you'd be doing just an ordinary installation, okay? And I want to show you how to encrypt an entire hard drive, okay? This is like what you would do with Bitlocker to the entire hard drive of the Windows machine, okay? But let's do it here for Ubuntu. And so you click on these advanced features. You click on this thing called LVM. And it's not a good name for it. It just means it allows you to easily add new hard drives, but it also allows you to do encryption. Okay, so we're going to do both of those. All right, and now we're ready to install. So we're going to say install now, and it gives you this window. And what is this window? This window is where you choose a password, okay? They call it a security key. We're going to just call it a password, okay, or passphrase. I'm going to make it something really simple, okay? So I'm just going to call it, I'm just going to do GOGO6GOGO. Now it does say weak password, but that's okay. All right. You should use a full passphrase if you were doing this on a real system, but we'll just use this. Okay. So GOGO6GOGO like that. Okay. And the green check mark means that it worked. Okay. And then there's also this recovery key. Okay. And there's the recovery key. All right, and you can see it's a lot shorter than for Windows, or you will see that it's a lot shorter than what you get for Windows. But you could go ahead and write that down, or you could just save the recovery key, okay? Which is probably a good idea to save the recovery key. All right, I say desktop open. Okay, there it goes. It saved it. All right, so let's go ahead and say install now, and oh, there was also the overwrite the empty space, which is probably the best thing to do, because if you encrypt everything, including the empty space, it's a lot harder for hackers to find where your data is, okay, if they were to try to find it. Okay, the next step is to choose your time zone. And so it already knows that we're in the New York area time zone, okay, so we don't have to change anything. All right, let's hit continue. All right, at this point you want to give a name to your account. All right, and so my actual name is, I'll use Anthony Basile like this. Okay, the computer name is going to be Anthony Virtualbox. All right, and it chose a username for me, Anthony like that. That's fine. Okay, and then finally a password. I'm just going to again use GOGO6GOGO because why not? Again, use a proper passphrase, and it should be different than your previous passphrase. Okay, and so you could ask it to log in automatically. I don't like doing that. I like to actually require a password to log in. Okay, so we'll just leave that alone, and so we require a password. That's basically your screensaver password. That's again not the password to decrypt, but the password to get past the lock screen. And that's continue. And at this point, it's actually doing the installation. This is going to take a while, so I'll just cut this out of the video until the very end. Okay, so the installation's come to an end. It took about an hour to complete. At this point, it's asking to reboot, and it makes sense that it has to reboot at the very end. Remember, all of the installation was running the operating system off of that virtual CD, and it was taking the data from the CD and putting it onto the hard drive. When this reboots now, it's going to reboot off of the hard drive, and we're going to actually be in our operating system the way we want it. Okay, and at that point we can take the ISO image out of the virtual DVD player, and every time after that it'll boot off of the hard drive. Okay, so let me do that, and you can see how that works. So I just hit the restart button. It's rebooting now, and you'll notice that it didn't get very far in booting before it came up with this screen. And you're wondering, what is this screen? It's not your login screen. This is the screen you get where you have to insert the encryption password so that you could decrypt the drive and then continue booting past that. Okay, so the encryption password that I chose was GOGO6GOGO, and we'll hit enter, and you can see now that it's continuing to boot. Now, I didn't use an incorrect password, but if I'd used an incorrect password there, it would have just said, no, I'm not booting past this point. You would have to continuously enter in passwords until you enter in the right one, or else it just won't boot. And if a hacker got this and booted it off of an external device, it'd be okay, because they could still not see what was on the hard drive, okay? Because everything that's on the hard drive is in ciphertext, and the only way you can get it into plain text is if you enter in that password that allows the decryption algorithm to decrypt the ciphertext into plain text, okay? So now it's continuing to boot, and eventually you'll see the desktop, and then we'll have to enter in our second password, and that second password is the password that gets us past the login screen. Now, it's still good to have that, because if you're, if you walk away from your computer and the screensaver locks, then no one can see your files. Okay, so it's good to have that, which is why I like having that. But that's different than the decryption. Okay, and there you go. The system has now booted, and it's giving me the login screen. And so now I can click on my name here and enter in my, this is my screensaver login. All right, hit enter. And in a second, I'll have the desktop. Okay, and there you go. We've got our desktop came up. Okay, it's going to ask for some configuration stuff at the beginning because this is the first time you've ever logged in, but we can skip all of this. We really don't need any of this, and there's really not much more to show you with Ubuntu. Basically, it's just like any other laptop, but it is a different operating system. Okay, so what you see here is you can see, for instance, Firefox. There's Thunderbird. Okay, and this is LibreOffice Writer, which is a replacement for Microsoft Word. We'll look at that later, and there you go. And this is the Ubuntu software. That's kind of like the equivalent of the Google Play Store, okay, where you can get more Ubuntu software. Okay, so there you go, and all of this is free, okay, because Ubuntu is free software. All right, that's it for our demonstration. Okay, everyone, so what we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at how to use Bitlocker to encrypt a USB drive in Windows 10. Okay, so what I'm going to be showing you right now are a series of pictures of Windows 10 desktop. This is not actually live. Okay, but it's good enough to see what we need to do to encrypt a USB drive in Windows 10. Okay, so the first thing is if you look down along the toolbar at the bottom here, there's this one icon. It's a little bit small, but it basically looks like a folder. If you click on that, what it does is it basically opens up a window that allows you to navigate the entire system. Okay, and so clicked on that, and you can see here you get this window that pops up, and you can go to your desktop to see what desktop folder to see what's on the desktop, your downloads, any documents, and so on. And what you see highlighted there in that kind of light blue square is a USB drive that I've attached to the system. Okay, and that's the drive that we want to encrypt. All right, now up along the top of that window is basically a series of tabs, and like there's files, home, and so on. The very last of the tabs, the writing is a little small, but it basically says manage. Okay, and so that does exactly what it says. It allows you to manage that that drive. So when you click on that tab, there's a series of icons that appear just below it, and one of them says BitLocker, another one says Optimize, another one says Clean or Clean Up, and the other one's Format. Okay, now the Optimize and Clean Up, never mind, they're not that useful for modern operating systems, but they're still there. But there's the Format and the BitLocker, and those are the two that are of interest to us. Okay, so let's take a look at the Format first. If we click on Format, you'll get this window that pops up. Okay, and basically it says, warning, formatting will erase all the data on this disk. Okay, now you may want to do that because that's a nice way to just, start fresh with a USB drive. And if you click yes, it'll wipe out any files that are there, and then you can start fresh. You got to be careful though that first, you may not want to do that, so don't format it unless you want to throw everything away. It's like throwing everything to the trash and then emptying out the trash. But this is not a secure way of deleting files off of your USB drive. So if you format a drive and then throw it away and someone gets it, they can still retrieve the files that are there because the format isn't deep enough to actually remove the files. All it does is it just kind of like puts them off to the side so that the operating system doesn't see them, and then you could write over them, okay, later on, and then they're erased. But if you just format and throw it away, that's not a secure way of doing it. Someone who knows what they're doing can definitely retrieve the files. Okay, if you want to securely throw away a USB drive, there are a few ways of doing it. There's a program called Shred that'll do that, but the easiest way, if you're done with the drive and you're going to throw it away, the easiest thing to do is you could format it first, but just take a hammer to it. If you physically break the integrated circuits that are inside of that USB drive, then that's it. There's just no way you're going to be able to retrieve that data from the drive. Okay, of course, if you do that, just be careful because the stuff shatters everywhere. But I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with just taking a hammer to it, and then that's it. It's done. There's no way anyone's going to be able to retrieve that that data. Okay, so you can format it or not format it. It doesn't matter. If you want to encrypt the files that are there, then don't format it at this point. Okay, and the next thing is you can click on that other tab. And that's the tab over here, and that's the Bitlocker tab. When you do that, you're going to get a wizard, okay? And that wizard's going to walk you through formatting the USB drive. So the first thing is to enter your password, okay? And just like I said a minute ago, you don't want to really just use one word, okay? It's better to use a passphrase. It should be at least 4 words long, unrelated words. But if you really want to do this right, use 6 words or more. Okay, now you don't want to lose that password. I'll show you what you can do if you do lose it, but you don't want to lose that password. At the same time, you don't want to just carry the password written on a piece of paper with you all the time. So what you could do is you can write down the password on a piece of paper, but put that somewhere like at home, maybe in like a safety deposit box, or like a safe or something like that at home, or maybe in a file cabinet somewhere that you can lock. If no one knows where that piece of paper is, that's fine. Okay, and you just don't want anyone to get that password, but you also don't want to forget it. Okay, so it is legitimate to write it down and just keep it in a very safe place. All right, well, once you've got the password in there, you can hit next, and you will go to this screen. Okay, now what's this screen? Because if you lose the password, you're locked out. Okay, you're not going to be able to get in. There's a second way that you can get in, okay? And that second way you can get in is by a recovery key. So it says, I want to save this recovery key. Where do you want me to save it, okay? Now you could save it to a whole bunch of different places. Like you could save it to a USB drive, okay? Or you could save it to a file. All right, and if you save it to the file and you leave the file on the computer, that's probably not a good idea. Okay, now I saved it to a file here just to show you how it can be done. But if you did save it to a file, you'd probably want to move the file off of the your computer and print it out maybe, and then delete it. Okay, because if anyone has that file, they have a way into that drive. All right, so again, this is just a second way in. And you do want to have that recovery key in case you lose your password and you lock yourself out. So what you could do is maybe save it temporarily to a file, print it out on a physical piece of paper, and then throw away that file. Okay, in other words, just delete the file from the computer. All right. Okay. Once you have that recovery key and and your password, you can go on. But by the way, this next window, I just decided to show you what a recovery key looks like. Here's the recovery key down here. So there's this identifier. That's not really your recovery key. The recovery key is below it, and you can see it's a really long set of numbers. Okay, and so I don't know how many numbers are there, but that would be very annoying to have to type in all those numbers. Okay, but if it's an important USB drive and you really need to get in, okay, you would sit there and you would type away at those with those numbers. Okay, all right, so then once you're past that, the next thing is it says to you, okay, I'm going to encrypt this, but how do you want me to encrypt it? Do you want me to encrypt just the files, or do you want me to encrypt the entire device? Okay, now the better option is to encrypt the entire device. Okay, so right here I have selected encrypt use the disk space. Okay, and that's faster, but it's not as good. And the reason you probably want to encrypt the entire thing is because if a hacker, like a really sophisticated hacker, looks at the drive, they will see what parts of the drive are encrypted and what parts are not. And they'll go, okay, the interesting data is over here and not over there, because the interesting data is wherever the encryption is, not wherever the blanks are. Okay, whereas if you encrypt the entire drive, then the hacker says, well, the entire drive is encrypted. I have no idea where to look. Okay, so even though I have encrypt use space, encrypt use disk space, all right, that's okay, but the better option is encrypt the entire device, the second option, the lower option. All right, if you did that, expect it to take a while, but nonetheless, that is the more secure way of doing it. Okay, my guess is that even if you did just encrypt the use disk space, I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, there's not that many people that are sophisticated enough that could do it, but it does, give some information about where the interesting data is. The interesting data is that portion of the disk which is encrypted and not that portion which is not. All right. And so after that, you get this option here, which you can just safely ignore and just do the new encryption, okay? New encryption mode. The reason there's a compatibility mode is because there was an older, Windows had an older form of encryption back in, like, I think from Windows Vista or like one of these older operating systems. That's so far into the past. I mean, most people don't have systems like that. If you want backwards compatibility so that you can plug this USB drive into an older Windows machine, like maybe a Windows Vista machine, you could pick the compatibility mode, but almost no one uses anything older than Windows 10. So if all your computers are Windows 10 or newer, then you could just do this new encryption mode and you're fine, okay? But they have to have it there just in case some people needed the legacy stuff, okay? And then you get this window here, and this is kind of the point of no return, because once you hit the start encrypting there, it's going to start encrypting, okay? And again, if you did the entire disk encryption, expect it to take, it could take even upwards of like 5 to 10 minutes, depending on, how fast your computer is. Okay, so yeah, it could take a while, but it is worth it because it gives you, some really good encryption. Okay, once it's done, it tells you the encryption of drive E is complete. Okay, and then you can click close. Now, before I show you the next window, take a look at the icon now. Okay, the icon, all right, it's a little small, but basically you see this like white box, which is supposed to be the USB drive, and on top of it, the image that's on top of it is actually like a padlock. Okay, and the silver padlock, the way you see it right now, is basically open. All right, let me go back to the very beginning here, all right, to link number 2, and take a look at the icon here. You see that it's just that square box representing a USB drive, all right? But, once it's encrypted, it now looks like, whoops, okay, here we go. Once it's encrypted, it's got that box, but now it's got that padlock, okay? The silver padlock. By the way, the silver padlock is unlocked, okay? Again, it's kind of hard for you to see, but it's unlocked, which means that if you double clicked on that icon, you would actually get into the disk, the USB drive, and you'd be able to see the files that are there, and you go, well, it doesn't look encrypted at all. I know it doesn't look encrypted, but it is, because if you reboot the machine, what you'll discover, so here we go, I'm restarting my Windows 10. When it comes back up, if you navigate to that icon again, you'll see the lock, but this time the lock is gold, okay, and it's closed. And that means that the padlock is, that the device is encrypted and you can't get at it. If you double click it, you won't be able to see the files. Instead, what will happen is you'll get this window that pops up here. It says, you have to enter a password. So if you don't know that password, you can double click on this device all you like, and you're just not going to be able to get in, okay? Now, even if it fell into the wrong hands and it fell into the hands of someone who was a hacker, and they could totally bypass this window or whatever, and they could look at the binary on that drive directly, they wouldn't see plain text that they could read. They would see ciphertext. So even no matter what kind of software you have, no matter what kind of magic you have, that device, okay, that USB drive has only ciphertext on it, and ciphertext is not readable without the password. Okay, and so that's what it's doing. It's saying, hey, give me this password. Now, if you put in the wrong password and you hit unlock, it just the window kind of shakes a bit and says, no, I don't accept that. And you can keep doing it, and it just won't let you in. Okay. Now, suppose that you you forgot your password. You see where it says more options? You can actually click on that. Okay, you can click on that, and then it gives you this enter recovery key. Okay, and that's what you would have to do if you forgot the password but you had the recovery key. So you could click on that, and then it would give you, it would open up another window, and then you could start to enter in that recovery key. Okay, but if you do know the password and you enter it in here, and then you click unlock, then suddenly what happens is the gold padlock turns silver, and the icon shows the padlock, the latch on the padlock has been opened. And then you can double click on the icon, get into it, and start working with the files that are in there, and so on. Okay, and so everything that you put on that device is going to be encrypted. As soon as you drag something into your USB icon, then it'll immediately become encrypted. Okay. Now, if you lose the USB drive and someone gets it, it's encrypted. But any files that are on your desktop, if that your or laptop, if the laptop itself is not encrypted, of course, then they could see that. But the USB drive, any files that are on the USB drive, okay, when the USB drive is either attached or unattached from the computer, they're encrypted, and without that password, you're not going to be able to get at it. Okay, so there you go. That's how you encrypt a USB drive. And I recommend people start doing that. It's fairly safe. If you're not sure, then do it with a USB drive that doesn't have any like critical files on it. And until you start to get used to it, and then you could start using this. And then if you've got any kind of sensitive information, like I don't know, like your social security number, or like passwords to your bank accounts and things like that, you can put them on that USB drive and feel fairly secure that no one's going to be able to read them, okay, without that password. All right. Now, what this doesn't encrypt is the entire laptop. Okay, you can do that. You can encrypt the entire laptop with Bitlocker, but I wouldn't recommend that you do that unless you really know what you're doing, or it's a brand new laptop. Okay, and the reason I say brand new is because when you first bring your laptop home, it doesn't have any critical files on it, and so suppose you did something like wrong and you encrypted it, and then you go, oh, now I can't get in. Well, then at least you could either recover the operating system yourself, or they could do it for you at the store. It doesn't take them very long. It's very easy to restore a laptop to pristine if you don't have anything on it. But if you've had the laptop for a while and you've got a lot of critical data on it, a lot of important, like all your works, all your school stuff and stuff like that, and you encrypt it and you make a mistake and then you can't get back into it, then you go, oh no, I've just locked myself out of everything. And if you lock yourself out of a system that you've encrypted and you can't get in, and you don't have the recovery key, and you don't remember the password or whatever, you're really stuck. No one can really do that for you. Okay. Now, can someone actually decrypt it? It is possible, but the amount of computing power is so overwhelming. It's like you have to try every single possible password under the sun. There's so much effort involved that no one's going to do it for you, or else it would just cost some unbelievable amount of money, and you wouldn't want to do it. Okay. So anyhow, my point is that before you encrypt, make sure that whatever you're going to be encrypting, like if you make a mistake, you're not going to lose anything critical. Okay. And then once you get used to it, you'll see that it's it just becomes second nature, and you wouldn't worry about it. Okay. It's always safest to just start with a single USB drive and then encrypt that. Okay. If you do encrypt the entire operating system, then every time you boot the computer, you're going to have to enter in that password. Otherwise, the computer won't get past a certain point. Okay. And that's how you use Bitlocker in Windows.